All right, we're live. Hey, Javier.
How you doing?
Good. We'll just give a couple minutes for people to join. If you guys want to jump on the chat and say hello, or if maybe where you are listening and viewing us from, it's always fun to see where people come from. Love to see you. Just drop it in the chat.
Grab a drink.
Grab a drink. Yep. Javier has his coffee. I've got my water. What's your drink? That's the good question for the chat is what's your energy drink of choice?
What was yours, Vicki?
Coffee. Yours? Coffee?
Americano. I have an espresso at home.
Oh, I do too.
Yeah,
I love it. I'm kind of snobby about my coffee. I don't like getting new coffee.
It's just easy.
I know. I like frothy coffee with a little bit of flavor, cream in it. I like I'm trying mushroom coffee now, which is actually pretty good. It's got a little cinnamon in it, maybe a little chocolate. So,
yeah,
let's try some new things.
Mushroom coffee's taken off. It's been a thing.
I know it is. So, ooh, dirty chai tea latte, yum. Matcha tea latte too. In fact, I just read that matcha tea, since it's grown in Japan, that they're really aggravated what we're doing to it in the US because we're putting, we're turning it into lattes and making it stuff. And they're like, no, it's this pure
American situation, right?
Yes, yes. No, I did go on.
We take something beautiful in culture, we add sugar.
Exactly, of course. All right, Coffee Dan, yes. All right. Well, let's get rolling. Thank you guys so much for joining. This is episode 2 of Channel Chat. And the whole purpose of this is just to talk about what's going on in the industry. Our last episode last month, which was our first one, we talked all about the public cloud and how costs are rising. We talked about inshitification. So if you haven't heard that, go look it up. Google inshitification, E-N, shitification.
You've been in
Yeah, exactly. Really what inshitification is about is what's happening right now in the world of media streaming to us, like with Netflix, as well as in the public cloud, where their costs are going down. However, the users' costs are going up. And we're not getting the value we used to. That's inshitification. So that's happening to our customers right now. And then we also talked about what are some of the processes to assess your environment and how you're utilizing and where are some opportunities to help meet your goals and get your costs more in line. So today, I'm real excited to have Javier with me from Akamai. We have a partnership with Akamai that we're very excited about. We're perfectly aligned in the use cases that we solve for. Those use cases being around this inshitification, so leading customers to cloud repatriation or rebalancing their workloads. Also, customers are dealing with the rising VMware costs. So that's causing them to look at their IT strategy, as well as data sovereignty. Those are some of the use cases that Aptum really works with and that Akamai does as well. So very excited. We're going to drill into some of that. So Javier, why don't you introduce yourself to the team?
Absolutely. Javier Garcia, AVP of Sales for Akamai. I've been at Akamai for a little bit under 2 years, and I help go to market for net new business. That's what we do. And I want anybody to say inshitification 3 times in a row.
That's great. Also, Javier's team supports channel partners also in working opportunities. So you'll see him and his team a lot. So let's start talking about this whole, what's inshitification cost. So first of all, why did Akamai, so Akamai is fairly new to infrastructure, right? Cloud infrastructure. So why did Akamai get into that business?
Yeah, so I guess I'll start with like the legacy of Akamai. Akamai got into infrastructure for CDN, which was velocity of speed of like using the internet at a more optimal and efficient way. I think that's where it starts. So I guess its roots are always been in infrastructure. It's always been there. And with that, it developed different methods and ways of kind of using the internet. And from there, we developed a WAF, which was a security, which then opened the door into security space, which we've been in for 10 years. And the famous story is that they were talking to one of the largest customers we had, and there was this latency issue that they were having, that they needed a specific use case. And so we got into exploring of like how we can solve for this. And it led us into the compute world. It led us into the economics of the compute world. And so we just decided to build it out. Yeah, there was a model for it. And so that's where the idea sparked to get into infrastructure, like real core infrastructure. And so, 4 years later, 4 years ago, they bought Linode as a venture. And that's how they started the concept of cloud with Linode. That's where it arises. And if you just look at the TAM, I mean, it's a $2.5 trillion TAM by 2030, and it's a CAGR of 22%. So it's not a bad idea of economics as to getting into this business. It's a great idea. That's the overall sense of it.
Exactly. And it makes so much sense with what Akamai does with the network and content and security, and now that infrastructure component. So, by the way, anybody, if you have questions, throw them into the chat and we'll make sure we get to them. Okay.
Yeah, in a typical hyperscaler, when you see it, it's the growth comes from within, right? So it's the core components, and then they layer things on top of it, right? So you layer security, and there's now CDN inside hyperscalers. We kind of build it the opposite way. So we build out, the latency pieces of that, and then build security on top of that. And now we needed a missing piece, which was the core components, and that's the core computing.
Yeah. So getting there, you addressed it a little bit, but dive a little bit more into the challenges you're seeing. You have the one customer drive you to that, really, but there's a lot more going on in the market causing that huge amount of TAM out there. So what are some of the things, I mentioned the use cases earlier, but some of the things that you're seeing as you're talking to customers with your team?
Yeah, so for instance, I mean, things have definitely adapted and changed in the last 5 years, and even more so last year. Like, things are moving quite frequently and fast. So 5 years ago, when we think about like COVID, infrastructure was really important, right? You need elasticity, you needed to move, things are moving incredibly fast. And so it really opened that door for where latency started to become a real issue. Like, where can you do compute as close as possible to the end user? And I think that's where like the core niche of Linode comes from. Like, hey, we can do all these lightweight stuff that we can do at the edge, and have some kind of compute power at the edge. And having our network so massive globally, it just made perfect sense. And so as we start to shift into that, we start to see other venues that are coming out, which is now AI boom. Right now, we now have hardware and core competencies that we need to have in order to justify the workloads that we have. And they kind of both meet in the middle. Like, we have a global network that allows you to do both things at the same time. So if you have really heavy workloads, we have core components that we can do them at. And then you have lightweight things that a lot of apps do need. We can do that at the edge and diminish latency significantly, and have almost no egress as well. So those are the two core components as to where you can see Akamai shine in latency, and then heavy workloads as well.
So that just makes me think of what happened yesterday, right? AWS had this major outage in the East region. Everything I am seeing online is blaming AI, and they're warning people about the more people are using AI, the more compute power it's going to take, the more susceptible the platform providers are going to be to outages. So any thoughts around that, just based upon what you were just talking about with having especially AI at the edge, so more compute at the edge required? Any thoughts around that?
Yeah, a couple of things. So first of all, it just proves how dependent we are on AWS. Like there's a piece of that is very frank. Like, and the other thing too that I was talking to some colleagues is it's kind of acceptable in some way. Like we accept it that it's okay that there is this downtime because
Mm-hmm.
of the size of it makes it justifiable. Right? It's like, oh, everybody's down, so take the day off. I think that's the way that we consider it. But it's funny, and it has to do with architecture, right? So it's like everyone's dependent on this like zone that everyone's using in that general zone area. So I
Mm-hmm.
think it's a little bit of architecture too. This kind of adds a little bit of this portability. So we have this customer that is 100% Kubernetes, like all Kubernetes. There's nothing else he does. I mean, he has no problem shifting and moving, and that's modern as it gets. It's not.
Yeah.
It's a gaming company, obviously. They have the ability to do so milliseconds, using all kinds of different platforms to be able to do that kind of speed. Um, but it gives you a taste of what is possible. And then you mentioned AI, but there's also the negative side of AI in terms of like there's bad actors out there that they can
Yeah.
help with that, right? And so they have the scale as well
The
to be
leapfrog game. Yeah.
it's the other side of it.
Yeah.
Um, so I think it's just an interesting conversation about like modernizing yourself a little bit and using these situations um, to kind of poke at the infrastructure and see where you can modify things and create efficiencies where you didn't have them before. So it's a good way to you were affected by it.
Yeah.
That's probably a good idea to look into it. It's probably like the next step because this was just a multi-hour
Yeah.
situation. If you have a bad actor and someone's
Could be
taking down
multi-day.
AWS and it could be a monthly thing, what would you do? I think it's kind of an important question for a lot of
Yeah.
folks.
Great time to look at it, do a well architected review, take a look at that, make sure it's meeting your business needs. Um, by the way, for those of you listening who aren't familiar with Kubernetes, I just did a post on it last week. You can go find that. And probably the next episode, little hint, may be around Kubernetes too, because um, I just thought it was about portability, but it's about a lot more, right?
Well, now it is. I mean, when you,
Yeah,
when you
yeah,
look, I think it depends on the customer, and I think it depends on the agility of that customer. So obviously this is a gaming customer, so it's not as easy to reference, but they're 100% Kubernetes, and everything's
yeah,
portable. They can move and shift and whine and go anywhere they need to go, and that's a very rare architecture
yeah,
to have. It's a younger crowd that built this out, that they have the function to be able to do that, and that's quite new in the industry. I wouldn't say new, but it's rare to see a company of that size that can shift all of their traffic instantaneously. It's pretty rare to see.
that's amazing. And gaming is just a lot of I/O for those of us that used to talk about the I/O day, right? So it's a lot of compute going on. So for companies that are in public cloud now or just looking to migrate to cloud, so what are some of the options that Akamai Cloud is solving for specifically as opposed to maybe some of the other platforms?
Yeah, I can give a little bit of an overview too. So, um, for most folks, I would say, egress is a problem in terms of the cost. Latency is always going to be a problem, but obviously, a gaming company's latency issues are going to be severely much more complex than a health industry, right? They're just different. They're not as important.
Yeah.
And so I think that's one piece. But I think the general sense of cost is pretty easy to talk about because most people have sometimes trouble. Some companies have trouble with managing the economics of the cloud, and that's a true statement generally anywhere. And it
Yes.
comes from multiple sources, right? So I don't I don't like to vilify the. I, I think hyperscalers have done a lot of good. Like
Hmm.
if you think about like the cost of hardware has gone significantly down. The price of purchase, right? So being able to purchase mass loads of hardware has driven hardware significantly down. The ability to have ultra powerful machines is all due to hyperscalers.
Yeah.
AI wouldn't exist if it wasn't for hyperscalers, because the compute power that you need
Right.
to solve for it, right? So, the chip makers and all of that. So there's a lot of good from the hyperscalers that's come from this. Obviously, they do have to reap their rewards, right? They built the darn thing, so they need to figure out how to profit from this stuff, and I think that's critically important. But what I think it exposes is the lack of competition. There isn't a lot of competition out there when you think about this, in the sense of, how many hyperscalers exist. There's three, and now some would say there's four with Oracle.
Yeah.
There's only three of them, right? So there's only three. Well, they have a governance over the pricing points that they can put. So that takes control away from companies, and it puts it into their control. And I think it's part of engineering, architecture, and developers to try to bring control back, find ways to gain control over price points, costs, and so forth. So I think that's my first piece that I get into, having lack of competition is one thing. So it opens up to other cloud providers out there like DigitalOcean and us and OVH and other competitions, which we thrive on. We do not mind. We want more competition to be out there. Again, the benefit of having a hyperscaler is that we opened AI, and look at that now, right? So the more competition there is, the more innovation there is, the more ability to new software and other things that can happen. So I think that's the first piece to cost. I think the alternative of not being there is important. So now that we provide an alternative to that, there's companies out there that are looking for an alternative to either a hybrid model that they have. They might have an on-prem and public cloud that they're dealing with. We deal with that with a lot. Or folks that are just trying to abandon a hyperscaler and go to a actual viable option that they can look into. That's also a type of customer that we see a lot. That's hey, my bills have ballooned. I need some kind of help here. That ironically, there's a lot of these companies that sometimes hire a staff to manage their billing. That's kind of ironic that you move to the cloud to have efficiencies, and then you hire a team to help you manage costs. That's ironic in a sense. And I think what folks are really looking for, because nobody, once you're in the cloud or you have a hybrid model, you don't want to leave the model. You want to keep it the way it is. What you're looking for is an alternative to the ballooning costs. That's really what it is. And we provide that. We provide an alternative to what folks are looking for. So being able to have open source, being able to be portable, being able to be easy to access, stable billing options, a lot of that. And then there's one more point that I wanted to add to all of that as well with cost, is that someone has to finance the AI boom. Someone has to finance this. And we're all financing it. That's how it's going. Who are the biggest players in the AI boom? It's NVIDIA and all the chip makers. And the chip makers are having a great time with the hyperscalers, and the hyperscalers need to come up with the liquidity to be able to do this. And so that's where we all come in. We're all kind of paying a tax on AI boom, and that's you gotta monetize this stuff so that we can have more cash for the AI.
So true. And it's really, everything you're talking to is about workload rebalancing, right? We've been using the term repatriation. It's, yes, you may take some of those workloads out of the hyperscaler and find the right place to put them. And that's the rebalancing, figuring out which workload should go on which platform. Are the egress fees killing the customer because they're moving a lot of data over the network in and out of the hyperscaler? And that may be a better solution to look at Akamai Cloud or a private cloud scenario. So it's really about looking at each of those workloads and data, because that's what AI is all about, the data, and figuring out where it's supposed to go.
Absolutely. And, we don't speak to a lot of models of folks kind of moving off of a hyperscaler and back to on-prem. That's a kind of a rare conversation. We haven't had many. But typically what folks are looking for is a cost alternative, some alternative to what they're doing today. And we try to provide that path for a lot of folks. Hey, we've done this multiple times. We have the skill set, to be able to do the experience, a bit like I know it's scary, but you're going to be all right. Like things are going to, we can modify you and, re-engineer a lot of the stuff to make it easy for you to leave the cloud better than how you came in. I think that's the messaging we try to use a lot.
Yeah, that's great. And a lot of customers are out there asking for FinOps, and it may not really be FinOps, and FinOps is evolving into, it's really more understanding the costs and the usage of your systems.
Absolutely.
And helping determine, and that typically starts with an assessment. If a customer can't do it themselves, looking at Akamai and Aptum to do an assessment, to come in and help them really understand what they have now, and then point them in the right direction and help them get there.
Yeah, absolutely.
So any questions? It's been about 20 minutes. We've been chatting away. I have a few more, unless anyone else has questions for Javier.
It's been 20 minutes. Wow. Passed by kind of quick.
I know, it just went by quick. All right. So let's see. Let's talk about our partnership a little more in the channel for those folks listening who are in the channel here. The nice thing is Akamai and Akamai Cloud are in the channel, and Aptum is in the channel as well. So if that's the right solution for your customer, you can work with both of us and monetize both of that for your customer. So I just wanted to let you know about that. So let's go back. Another question is, we're kind of talking about a lot of the same things, but that's what's driving the conversation. So when you're meeting with your customers, obviously they're coming to you, or you're approaching them because they're doing business with other areas of Akamai. What would you say some of the key questions that an advisor, a trusted advisor, should be asking their customers?
Yeah, so I think it also depends on the size of the customer. So we have different conversations depending on the size. So we'll talk a little bit about like the different structure in terms of Akamai and what they've done. We some of the workloads that we've seen that do fairly well is folks that are open to modernizing. So like if you have conversations, especially if it's VMware. If it's not VMware, cost is an easy way to get in. It's like I don't want to just say it that way, but it's okay. It's a safe zone. For most of these customers, having conversations of like total cost of ownership, where it's been, how it's ballooned, where they're going, I think it opens up the door. Another one too that opens the door a lot is like, what's their growth? How much are they growing on the revenue side, right? Because we infrastructure plays a big, COGS, right? So what's the cost of your goods?
Yeah.
So if you were COVID and you're growing at 34% year over year, and now you're at 12% year over year, but your infrastructure costs continue to balloon at like 12 or 15%.
Right.
That might be a good conversation to have. Like what's going on with infrastructure and why is it ballooning out of control? We have a great example of a trading company that we were dealing with. They had a balloon in 2020 all the way to 2023. They were just, it was charting software. They couldn't get enough of it. And so they had to scale as fast as they could. And that's how they ended up looking into us, was like, hey, the infrastructure balloon out of like with just the blink of an eye. And that revenue growth trajectory just completely fell off a cliff. And so now they're on the opposite side of it, like revenue starting to dwindle, but the infrastructure cost is still at the same price. And so now they're
coming together more, right?
The opposite end of 2020.
Yeah.
And so we're getting a lot of that as well. So folks that were using, depending on the hyperscalers because of the volume of growth that they were having, that's finally come to an end. It allows you to be open up. So conversations about COGS, conversations about growth and revenue, conversations about like infrastructure, total ownership, that stuff comes into play and it helps open up any kind of door. And when you're talking about like 30 to 40% savings on a typical conversation, it opens up the door really quickly, and so it allows people to have a deep dive into to see what's going on.
Open some eyes. So you're just not talking to the technical, the IT department. You're probably talking to CFOs,
Absolutely,
the CEOs,
absolutely,
because they're the ones who really care.
No one in DevOps is saying like, sure, you know what, I want to move clouds. Like, no one says that. No one says that. No one says that. Everybody says no, absolutely. So it's always a conversation at CFO and CEO.
Yeah.
Always.
Yeah.
Absolutely always. It's the only folks that open the door immediately.
Yeah. So who is it typically that ends up with the responsibility for keeping the costs under control?
So typically during the project, or you're talking about like overall?
So like, okay, say, okay, so we've done the assessment. The customer's identified this opportunity to lower costs, and they're looking at alternatives. So we've done an assessment. We've identified a path forward for them to maybe rebalance some of those workloads. And then we help them migrate and get on their new platform. Well, now it's running. It's been optimized. Now what?
It typically depends. Like, we love to use managed services. I think managed services are like a key component, and also managed services play a big role too at AWS. Like you pay for managed services, they actually help you keep costs significantly low too as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's a big piece. We have our own managed services, but typically those are for very large enterprises. We're talking about like strategic accounts, like the larger media companies. When we think of like managed services, we think of smaller shops that allow you to be able to be part of the journey of like keeping the cost low. So I think that's a big point. With any cloud, any public cloud, I know you spoke a little bit about that in the last segment. Folks could spin something up and it stays up and it's there, and that's a real thing. And so having managed services to be able to do this, I think it plays a crucial role to keeping like costs at a significant.
Keeping it down. So put that on someone else. Bring someone else in to do that for you.
Unless you have a team an internal team that's dedicated to governance of that.
Yeah.
I would definitely have a partner involvement. And with the system integrators or partners that, MSPs that you're working with, they typically have the cost kind of built into it. So it's a good model for everybody. And then we typically depend on them. Now, the things that happens when you migrate off of a public cloud or on-prem or hybrids, there's some complexities on there that do depend on folks helping with the migration. It's not an easy thing to say. There's some complexities to it. Most of them are easy to spin up and some spin down, but it all depends on your architecture. How many folks you have, what's your talent base inside the company that can do that. And sometimes folks don't have that talent base. Not a lot of folks are moving cloud to cloud every weekend. So therefore it's kind of a rare thing to do. And so we depend a lot of, additional services to be able to do that, to really help make that transition really smooth, keep that smooth transition, and then keep costs low for a significant
over time
migration. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that's great. So that's where Aptum comes in as well. We're managed service providers that assess, design, migrate, and then operate and keep those costs under control.
That was my layup.
There you go. Love it. And we're just coming to the top of the hour. So quick summary. I mean, thank you. Hopefully this has been really helpful for people to get an idea of what they can be talking to their customers about, going in from that cost approach, talking to the CFO as well as the CIO, because the CIOs are feeling the heat too, and the CEOs for those smaller, mid-market companies, because they're responsible, and that there are ways for customers to rebalance their workloads that'll help them meet their ultimate goals. So great conversation today, Javier. Is there anything else, any more golden nuggets you have for everybody?
No, I think that's it. I think the era of the COVID boom ended and folks are looking for alternatives. They really are. And there isn't many out there. When you look at that chart, you see how many hyperscalers there is. It's only 3. And so there's viable options. We're very lucrative options for all the folks that are on this call. We're very lucrative in terms of like you get compensated on. I think that's a great piece to add as well.
Yeah. Sure.
And we're here to help any way we can.
Yeah. Great. Well, thanks tons for your time. Appreciate it, folks. If you want additional information, you can reach out to me. You can reach out to your Akamai regional channel manager. If you don't know who that is, Javier, or I can point you in the right direction as well. So thanks so much for joining us today, and we'll look forward to seeing you next month with a new topic.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right. Take care. Have a great day. Bye-bye.